Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the City Council meeting of Wednesday, March 7, 2018. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Okay, thank you. Albertson?
Here.
Bueller? Here. Danforth?
Here.
Lallam? Absent. Manty? Here. Roby?
Here.
Solom? Absent. Thorson?
Here.
Billhauer?
Here.
Y?
Present.
Thank you.
The first item on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda. Is there a motion and second for approval? Moved by Bueller, second by Y. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Second item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Is there a motion and second? Moved by Vilhauer, second by Manty. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 3 is the Library Annual Report presentation by Library Director Dee Dee Whitman.
Good afternoon, everyone. Just a quick technical question. Do I have to keep holding this down? No. Okay. Well, that's fantastic. I had sent out the annual survey for South Dakota Public Libraries, and I just wanted to give you a little bit of background before we proceed. This is a report that is required to be submitted to the state every year around this time of year. And a lot of the questions in the report are things that they need to be able to report to the Institute of Museum and Library Services, and which is on the federal level and funds libraries around the country primarily through grants given out by the state libraries. So if anyone had a question about that, I just wanted to clarify that. So all these things are required through the state. So I am going to just kind of scroll through, and if you had any questions, let me know. Some of this general things, we all know where we live. I'm Dee Dee. I also gave everybody a handout that has some of this information presented in kind of a more colorful, friendly way. We have the same open hours that we've had for years. We have some slight changes to salary because of changes in position, obviously. Mike was our former director. We have a couple changes in our librarian staff. We previously had 4 librarians who held the Master of Library and Information Science degree. Now that number is 2. That is myself and our assistant director, Maria Gruner. All right, I'm going to try to get all my things in the same place here. So our budget is slightly down from the previous year. That's our overall operating income. And this is a little bit about our funds other than what is allocated by the city, our fines and our gifts and things of that nature. So between those and the operating revenue from the city, our total operating income is $1,744,000. We had a slight savings this year on expenditures for staff because we were short-staffed for a number of months. So, you know, we'll take the positive of that we saved some money for the taxpayers. There were some negative results of that, as I'll talk about a little bit later, but we're hoping to address those in 2018. So, and we'll talk about programming in just a little bit, and I think that's where we had some negative occurrences there. All right. Expenditures. Keep on going. Keep on trucking. Okay. So here's where we've had some gains, and that's, I think, fantastic. We have a 7.5% increase in our number of total books and a 5.7% increase in our ebooks that were accessed through the South Dakota Titles to Go. We have a number of different ways that people can access ebooks and e-audiobooks. Some are a consortium with the state, some are titles that we purchase for our patrons, and some are consortiums with a few other larger libraries in the state too. Another place that we saw some gains, and I was really happy about, is a 14.2% increase in the total amount of audio. That's audiobooks, e-audiobooks specifically. And we do have a number of people who commute, and audiobooks are their way of life, if you will. So we do have, even in our print collections, if you will, our physical collections, our audiobooks are up as well. So I'm going to go down here just a little bit. So our total holdings, we do also have an increase from last year of 4.9%. So overall, we have more offerings for our patrons, and I'm happy with that. Next part of the report is about the service indicators. How many hours we're open. I mentioned that we're about the same. A place that we need improvement, and I think, as I mentioned, there was some negative consequences to being short-staffed for a number of months, is we had fewer programs and fewer people attending programs, and that those fewer people attending programs also led to a decrease in visitors to the library. So our total visits for 2017 was 115,000, and in 2016, it was 123,000. Now, I think that's a substantial gap. I think it's more than just the staff changes, but I think a lot of that is due to online usage of those ebooks, of the e-audiobooks, and our other resources as well. So even though there are fewer visitors coming into the library, we're still having good usage, and we will be going into the strategic planning process soon, and that is one of my big goals, is to increase visitor traffic to the library. But we're working on that.
Dee Dee?
Yes.
We have a question from
Absolutely.
Councilman Vilhauer.
You explained, Dee Dee, the drop off in 2017. It makes sense. Was it pretty stable, or what? If you go back a few years, what's the attendance been?
I think the last peak, if you will, was in 2011, and we've had kind of a decline throughout those years. And I think, again, we had an increase in online usage, and a lot of people really like our ebooks. One of the best things about them is that you don't have to worry about returning them on time, and you don't have to worry about fines. So, Mike, those might be perfect for you.
That I can vouch for that. My electronic usage has increased steadily over that time, and the visits that I make to the library has decreased, and the amount of fines that I pay is way down.
Well, and I look at that as a positive too, you know. And I mean, we already we have our funding in place, and we do get a decent amount of collect a decent amount of fines per year. So if we can save our patrons some fines, I think everyone's happy with that overall. So did I answer your question, Glenn? See if my brain can get back on track now. We're talking about fewer visitors to the library. That's it. We do have a, small decrease in the number of users, but it's actually within a couple hundred. So that's not too bad. That will be another of my goals in our strategic plan, is to increase the number of library users, especially per capita. There's some data about per capita users at the end of the report that we'll get to. All right, so next is about the circulation of our physical materials. Books were about the same, magazines a little bit down, and the non-print physical items, just in case anybody had any question about that, those are things like our DVDs, our CDs, and our audiobooks. So our total, excuse me, I got to get to the right page. Our total circulation of physical materials is slightly down. And the number I have actually corresponds to the total circulation of materials. Here, where did it go? Here it is. And that's between everything, all of the print and physical materials. So they're down by 0.7%, so not too bad. And a number, though, that I'd like to point out that will be on our, again, our goals to increase is the number of children's materials that were circulated. This year we had 84,678, and in the previous year we had 96,461. So about 12% decrease, and one of the positions that was open for a while was my previous position, the children's librarian. So we're going to focus on our programs and pulling people into the library and getting them accessing all those fantastic children's books. Okay, so then our total collection use between physical and electronic items is 250,614. And that's about what we had estimated mid-year for in the budget workbook. And that is down by a very small percentage. It's down from 252,448. So that's 0.3%, 0.73%, sorry, down. And in a transitional year, I'm okay with that. Next year when I present this, I hope those numbers will be different and we'll have some positive numbers there. Okay, so this is almost the last bit of the report here. And I mentioned, again, with the staffing changes in the transition, this is an area that we want to improve upon, and that's how many programs we're offering at the library and how many people are attending those programs. And in addition to programs that we offer at the library, we do a really large amount of outreach to area child care centers and things like that. So all of those attendance numbers were down because of 2 to 3 months without anyone in that position. Okay. The next bit is about one-to-one program sessions to the library conduct. That is when we help someone one-on-one with using a resource. And we collect that data, and it's about the same as it was last year. This is an interesting one for me as a former children's librarian. Did the library host a summer reading program? Yes. It's the busiest time of the year. We have so many different programs and thousands of people coming through the library, and their question is yes. Well, so the answer is yes. You'll see some interesting changes here about the internet, and one of the reasons there is a change is how we collected the data. For one thing, IMLS, like I said, is at the federal level. They will sometimes change what states need to report, and one of the things they changed was computer use to 30-minute sessions of computer use. And in the previous year, we didn't really have a good way of calculating that. And with the installation of the internet content filter this year, there's better tracking about the time that our patrons are on the computer. And so there was a really big increase from 9,109 to 32,718. So I think that it looks really good. The numbers are fantastic, but it really comes down to how we're able to collect our data more efficiently. Okay. And the next little bit is about interlibrary. Oh, sorry, Lynn.
Dee Dee, another question. Have you gotten much pushback from the public since the internet content filter was installed? I mean, that was a big issue when we were discussing it. And Have you heard much feedback on that?
We've had a bit of feedback, and most of it's been positive. I don't think a lot of patrons have been affected. And as a librarian, my concern is that it's potential, for people to not get the information they need. And we haven't seen that happen so far, so I'm really happy with that. And we do have an unfiltered internet access station. Should somebody be trying to access something, an adult be trying to access something that has been improperly flagged or something like that, or tagged as spam or whatever it may be. And as far as I know, no one has requested that access. They could. At any time, adults can request that access. So I would say it's gone pretty well so far. And we do, because of that software, you do need a library card to sign into the computers. So we'll see if we get a few more people signing up for library cards. We also have guest pass access, though. So if you don't have a library card, you can still use our computers. And we get a number of people from out of Cottington County that would like to use our computers. Anything else right now for the moment? We are close to being done. The next data is about our ILLs, or interlibrary loans, and they split them up into all sorts of categories. But I think it's more, the total is more relevant. And the good news is we have both received more interlibrary loans and loaned more interlibrary loans to libraries. We've received 9.3% more, and we've loaned out 5.4% more. Okay, so the next little bit is just reporting on who our trustees are, our president, vice president, other trustees, and our council rep. Thanks, Dan. Also, thanks, Bruce, for your service before as well. And I think the last little bit is about, do we have a Friends of the Library group? Yes, we do. And they put on programs. The next one is a movie on the third Sunday this month. You should come. And this is a bit about our accreditation. So we are currently accredited at the state level of exemplary, which is the highest level of accreditation, and we'll be putting our application together to receive that accreditation again for the next 3 years, 2019, 2020, and 2021. And at this point, I believe we should make that exemplary accreditation again without a problem. This next area is about our special services, and special services was one of the positions that we had that was open for a while, and I really was I wanted to make sure that those patrons did not lose access to their books. So while we were short on staff, I delivered the books, and then another of our staff members helped choose them, and we actually had an increase of 6.3% books that we have given out to our special services patrons in the year. So I was really happy to see final data on that. I wanted to make sure that we kept serving those patrons, and we did. And then we have our new special services librarian in place, Lisa Solom, and she is really passionate and dedicated to her patrons and her job, and I think she's been doing a really great job there too.
I will second that. I don't know if the council realizes this fantastic service that our library provides to people who are homebound or in nursing homes or just
Assisted
can't
living
make it to the library. We go to them and we deliver. It's really a great service.
And it doesn't have to be permanent either. Perhaps you may have a hip replacement or something like that, and you're recovering in a nursing home or an assisted living. We can help you get your books then as well. So Lisa Solom is the librarian to contact for that. And like I said, I think she's doing a great job. I was delivering to people for a few months, and then when I introduced Lisa to them, she just took to them all right away. She's doing a great job. Okay, so this next little bit, these are their supplemental questions. Most of these services we provide one-on-one in terms of technology and workforce development and social services. So when patrons approach the desk and have a specific inquiry, we can help them that way. But we also have computer classes, internet classes, and things of that nature. Sometimes we've had some social media classes as well. These are just questions from them if they would like a visit, if we would like a visit. And then the last bit of data here are those ratios and percentages I was mentioning before. So our local revenue, the ratios of how many people attend programs, children's, teens, and adults, and our registered borrows per capita. Right now it's 0.4%, so I'd like to see that a little uptick of that. But the visits per capita are pretty nice, 5.2. And
But
then
that's not 0.4%.
No,
That's
no, sorry.
40%, right?
Yes. No.
0.4
0.4
visitors
per
or borrowers per capita
Borrowers
would
per
be
capita.
40%. That's pretty good.
That is pretty good. And also the number of circulations per user is 27.6. I'd like to see that raised too, but still a pretty good number. Okay, I think that might be everything, unless you have more questions for me,
I do.
and hope I have answers.
Councilman Danforth?
Dee Dee, do we ever compare our primary metrics? You know, you got a lot of information there, but
It is
you've
a
got
lot.
a number of them that you must monitor or watch in a scaled-down version. But do we compare ours to other libraries of larger communities to see our use and our volumes and such against what's happening in other libraries?
Yes, and I know in my previous position, I was comparing specifically children's data because that was my focus. And I'm going to, right now, we're in the process of just submitting that, the data for 2017 for all the libraries around the state. And so when that is submitted, they send out information about comparing all of the cities, the programs, the circulation, and all of that. And then, of course, we have to look at cities comparable to our size and what is the difference in the community. For example, I know from the children's data that the amount of usage for our summer reading program is maybe a third of Brookings, for example, and they're not much larger than us, but they do have the largest university in the state. So there are some things like that that might change usage and things, but I'm happy to provide you all with that information when I get it about what other libraries around the state are doing, because I think it's a good benchmark to make sure that we're offering the same things to our community as other libraries are.
Sure, that'd be great. Yeah. Yes. Councilman White?
Couple questions for you, Dee Dee. The registered borrowers, 8,467, is that just how many are registered, or are they active within a certain period of time?
I believe that is in all just the number of current borrowers.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a process where every year we go through borrowers that have not used the library. And I think it's we might give them like 3 years. So we do some purging for people who aren't using their library cards.
Mm-hmm. And my second question, the bookmobile, does that fall under your authority?
No, it does not. That is a separate entity. That's the Hamlin Coddington Bookmobile, and they have an office here in town. A little bit of library history. They used to be housed in our public library, but I believe their board made a decision 10 or 15 years back to change their location.
So their books are their books and your books are your books?
Yes, but they are like any other library that's connected to the interlibrary loan system, they can request, their patrons can request interlibrary loans through us. And I think occasionally we've done a little bit of borrowing if there's a staff member of the Bookmobile who sometimes comes, grabs things for our patrons too. But most of it, I think, is through ILO.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, Dee Dee.
Oh, you're welcome.
Appreciate
I
it.
love the library and love talking about it. So
Yeah.
if you have any questions, let me know.
Thanks.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the Urban Renewal District 2017 Annual Report of Finances and Activities. And Chairman Vanessa Victor is here to talk about this.
Good afternoon. With the exception of the finances, that I am going to let Kristen handle because she knows them much more vividly. So if you want to start with that, Kristen, then I'll do a quick highlight of our activities this year.
Sounds good. Thank you. Not much change. I guess the biggest things to probably point out for 2017 with the Urban Renewal Fund, at the bottom of the income statement, you'll see that they $22,953 was taken from the fund balance. A lot of that is the fact that we're no longer doing the assessment, so there's not a lot of revenue coming in. So what they're kind of going off of right now is their cash on hand. Probably the other thing to notate is you can see between 17 and 16, the revolving loans on the balance sheet went up. They did, I think, around 37,000 of new loans. So their restricted cash at the bottom looks a little lower than the previous year, but that's simply because they put more loans out to people. So if there's any other question on the financials, I can. Otherwise, I'll let Vanessa talk about the activities.
And the loans are basically the primary purpose behind the Urban Renewal Board. So it's nice to see that those numbers are up and people are still aware of it and they're utilizing that going forward. Yes, Glenn.
What kind of terms, and maybe it's in there, what kind of terms typically do those loans carry as far as repayment length, interest rate?
It's a 3-year term is what we do, and I don't know the interest rate offhand, but I know it's a very low interest rate. So,
Councilman Roby?
What a default rate looks like, any issues there?
to be honest, I believe since I've been with the city, there's only been one, and that's it. So it's pretty good. I think everybody that takes these loans out really has a purpose for it, and it is a good way for them to get a project done, and they want it. So.
Okay. Just a couple of highlights. We do have a primarily brand new board, only one returning member, so we're all kind of treading water, but learning as we go. The biggest thing, as you all know, was in August we had recommended doing a tax assessment. That was actually a previous recommendation from the prior board as well. Being voted down, we're slim pickings on cash, and I don't necessarily see that changing. We are evaluating other funding sources and grants that could be applicable. The biggest part to apply for one of those grants is we need to have a steadfast plan and a capital improvement plan, which we are working on. H2O 20 gave us the remainder of their dollars, so I think it was $3,500. And we have hired Confluence, and they are coming up with the streetscaping plan to morph the charrette into basically itemized tasks that we can try to accomplish. So we have $50, maybe we do some improvements to the lighting, or we have $100,000 and, let's really take a look at a couple of curb pop-outs. So we're really excited for the streetscaping. The overwhelming consensus, I guess, with the tax assessment from the people within the urban renewal agency or area was that they wanted to see a definite plan. The nice thing is we will have a plan, and it will be visualized too. Confluence is very good at their renderings, so people should have some buy-in, which we enjoy. The other thing that I just want to note would be on the flowers. We did get money from some of the park budget to help with the flowers downtown. I believe that was $2,500. And in years past, we've been paying $14,000. So we're trying to get it to stretch as much as possible. We did apply for a grant with the Community Foundation, and they gave us a matching $2,500 grant, so we have $5,000 for downtown flowers. Any way you look at it, the flower footprint's going to be smaller. So now we're kind of doing a grassroots effort to try to get buy-in from local businesses and try to get them to embrace the fact that flowers are going to be slim, but please still decorate your storefronts and continue on that way. And the other major item of note is we are changing our meeting time and location. Once again, kind of grassroots effort to try to get out in the community and be a part of the urban renewal area. We are going to move from business to business. So hopefully, well, at 7:30 on Thursdays, there's usually nobody else here. But I'm hoping at noon it will draw some people into some local businesses and help and just put less of a stigma on the board. So tomorrow at noon at Gather, if anyone wants to join.
Excellent. Any questions?
I do. Do you believe that once you have the plan that you're working on making and having the Confluence's plan and those kind of things, do you feel that once you have that in hand and can show a tangible, real progress type of thing, do you feel that the business owners in the district would be more accepting of a increase in that or a return of that tax?
That is precisely my hope. This is a big Hail Mary. And instead of, we're going for a big bone instead of just flowers, we want to really try to change the downtown as much as possible. So, it will be a big ask. And supposedly that is what the downtown community wants. If there's still blowback, I guess I don't know where we would go from there, other than look at other grants and see what's available.
I think it'll make a big difference.
I hope
I
so.
really do.
I believe in the past, part of the reason that the tax was held in abeyance was that people really didn't feel like they were seeing anything for their money, So it is something that wasn't, okay, I have to know how to word this. The tax wasn't like permanently killed, it is in abeyance. So it is something that even the council could choose to bring back. Would that be correct, Sarah?
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
So it's something that if you have, let's work together on that, with the business owners, and maybe we do a incremental increase or something like that.
Yeah.
So,
Councilman Danforth?
I'm going to ask a question first, because I do know that, going to Beth's question, I think one of the things that we heard loud and clear was we're not against the tax as long as we know that it's going for something specific and something that will benefit their operations. But I think the other thing that we heard was some of these businesses that are maybe on the fringes of our current urban renewal district defined area feel left out. And having seen some of those examples when they were here, it seems like that certainly could be the case, And so has Has there been any thought of redefining the urban renewal district, or is it set, it is what it is? I think some consideration needs to take place there for those people that, without question, are out on the fringes.
We could look at that, but it mostly follows the zoning, and it's a C1 zone. So if we have areas that are not zone C1 that are in the boundary, or vice versa, we should be looking at that.
We have talked about it as a board, and technically, if you look at the definition of an urban renewal area, it doesn't have to be just downtown. You could designate another section of town as well, and I mean, our board would oversee all of it. I did talk to Todd Kays about it and just had asked if it was set in stone or if it could be reevaluated, and it could. I understand the concern from the fringes because, you know, I look at Broadway and Kemp and even our streetscaping. It is, granted we have a limited budget and Confluence is giving us a lot for a little amount of money, but I mean, we're really focused on Broadway and Kemp because that is the heart core. And for people on the fringes to see, and it's still going to be a long haul, best case scenario. But there are benefits of being in the urban renewal area as well. So I don't want to just discount them and say, no, sorry, we decided to count you out, and it would have to be a lot of public involvement and
If they
some surveys.
take themselves out of the boundary, then they would not be eligible for loans,
Mhm.
right? And there's that. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Vanessa.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is presentation of the preliminary 2017 financial report by the Finance Officer, Kristen.
Thank you. I'll keep this pretty brief. This is a requirement each year that on the first meeting in March, we present our preliminary, so these are definitely preliminary numbers for 2017. Probably the biggest things to point out is first we'll go over the governmental, which will have the general, the capital improvement, capital project. The other governmental holds all of our special revenue and our GO bond fund. So if you flip kind of to the bottom of that, the big thing to note is in the general fund and the capital improvement fund, we added to our fund balance, which is something we always like to see versus take away from it. In 2016, the general fund, we used about $610,000 of fund balance, and for the capital improvement, we used about $1.7 million. So these are good things to see that we're kind of putting back to our fund balance, which is what we want. The other section of this is our governmental long-term debt. That's going to be where our sales tax revenue bonds and our SRF loans are, as well as the GO bond. So we're at about $38.3 million in debt as far as for those. Then if you flip to the next part, it goes over our proprietary funds. Those are the enterprise funds. Everything right there looks pretty much about the same. Everything's looking good. And then the long-term debt below there also under the sewer fund and then also the water fund. Those are the SRF loans that those have out. Then the last part of this report breaks down where our cash is. And Great Western, of course, holds the most because they have our pooled fund. The remaining balances are the banks that have bid on our CDs. So there's where those funds are held. As I said, this is a very preliminary report, has not been audited. This is just kind of what 17 is looking like. The audit will begin here in April, and then we will have the final CAFR in June. So if there are any questions, I can try to answer them. Or
Councilman Vilhauer?
I know you can answer this one. As someone that just picks this up that hasn't got a clue about governmental accounting, explain capital improvement fund versus the capital project fund.
Okay, so the capital improvement fund is our second penny sales tax that we take in. The capital project fund was the fund that we established when we did our bonding for the 3 different projects. So when we decided to do those 3 projects, we established a fund. It took in all of the bond revenue, and that's where all the expenses have also come out of for those projects. So that's the difference between those 2 funds.
Good question. Councilman Roby?
With the city having made some bold moves with the wellness center, the softball fields, a potential, 2 ice rink facility, and some other things, the question that comes up a lot is, gee, you guys have spent a lot of money, and I'm not sure if I'm comfortable with where the city's going. And we try to reassure them that was pretty well thought out, but I think that's a drum we have to beat continually. So would you just maybe give some high-level comments with those thoughts in mind?
Yes. Like I said, if you look at the long-term debt, we have 32.7 in our sales tax revenue bonds, 3.3 is in our SRF loans, and then 2.3 is the GO bonds. If we just focused on our capital improvement fund, under the expenditures, you'll see the debt service, and the debt service is what is paying for all those loans. So under the capital improvement fund for 2017, between our principal and interest, we spent around $3.1 million. So that's what we're paying each year for our debt to hold. I think what we need to be aware of as a city is our debt. We definitely added a lot. It was $30 million, with these last sales tax revenue bonds. I think we're sitting okay. The thing that we always need to be careful of, because our capital improvement fund is the fund that covers our street improvements and the other projects that are needed throughout the year. $3.1 million is what we're paying just to cover our debt. We definitely still have room to go according to the rules of our 5 and 10% on our property values. So we have some room there, but I think it's definitely something that we continue to watch.
Thank you. Councilman Danforth?
When does the event center get paid off? Isn't that like 4 or 5 years from now or something?
It's close, yes. I did look that up in 2023.
Okay.
That one will be done.
And so that'll change that picture. By
Yes,
the
and
tune
that bond is actually under the other governmental. So when you look at their bottom portion for their debt, the GO bond principal that was paid was $445,000. So, but that's under the other governmental.
per year.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And so when we're done with that, where's that going to show up then on our those dollars that we would normally have spent are going to show up somewhere and get used, correct? You'll show a reduction in
Yes.
your payments,
Yes.
which is going to show available dollars. Now, they might be already allocated to something, but
Right.
where do they show
And
up?
that
then?
was the bond fund. So that was kind of, there won't be really any more revenue coming in the general fund or the capital, because that was actually a bond fund. It's kind of like how the capital project fund is. Once our projects are all done, that fund will eventually go away. And that's how the GO bond one was set up. So what you'll really see is in the other governmental, just lower expenditures. The other governmental also holds the TIF funds. So those are where they sit as well. But
Other questions? Councilman Vilhauer?
I guess I would just like to make a comment. I was thrilled to see the increase in the fund balance, particularly in the general fund. I mean, that's always been a concern. That's what, in effect, drives our economy or our finances here in City Hall. To see that go up, and as well as capital improvement, and then also looking at the strong fund balance, especially unassigned in the general fund. I just feel good about where we are financially. It's been some things done correctly in the past, and hope we continue. And sales tax revenues continue to increase. I guess I'm excited financially where we are.
Me too. Anyone else?
Just as a trivia question, where did we end last year? I know you sent the report, I don't recall, but just for the record, where did we end with sales tax collections for 17 compared to budget? I know we exceeded budget.
okay, compared to budget, I wrote down that for 17, we came in about 440,000 over budget for the sales tax revenue in the general fund. So came in good.
Excellent. Anything else? Thank you, Kristen. The next item on the agenda is old business. Is there any? Is there any new business? Are there any liaison member reports? We have no need to go into executive session pursuant to SDCL 1-25-2. And so I would, Councilman Vilhauer?
Can you just give us a real brief update in light of the snow the last week or week and a half, especially the last few days? I mean, snow removal, how'd that go here in town for the most part?
The snow removal was challenging with this most recent event because not only was it a lot of snow, it was very sticky, wet, heavy snow. And I think that the street department has done a really fantastic job in getting things cleaned up as quickly as they have. But it's a big job, and they're not going to finish with that right away. I think I'll just take this opportunity to clarify. I know there's some misconceptions about snow removal and how we do it and why we didn't get the downtown snow removal started before last night while you were sleeping. The snow ended yesterday, and so we jumped right on it. That's our protocol. As soon as a snow event stops, then right away we'll get at that downtown. So we did address that immediately. We don't generally remove the snow more than once during an event for any of the areas except for the emergency routes. We keep emergency routes clear of snow all the time during events and whenever we've accumulated more than 2 inches for sure, but a lot of times even before. So snow routes are our highest priority. People saw snow being removed on the snow routes, but not downtown. That's our standard procedure. As soon as the event stops, then we'll address the avenues, streets, and downtown. And the downtown gets immediate attention once the storm is over. And then the downtown is the only area where residents are allowed to push their snow into the street. They are asked to do that. They try to get that done before the street department comes and collects the snow. Most places in town, that's not okay to push your snow off your sidewalk or driveway into the gutter. But downtown, that's acceptable. And then in the areas where we have pushed the snow to the side of the road, causing it to go on top of a sidewalk, the street department will remove that. Normally, it's the adjacent property owner's responsibility to remove the snow that accumulates on the sidewalks in town adjacent to your property. However, if the street department pushes snow from the road onto your sidewalk, they come back and remove that. So hopefully that answers some questions.
Mayor, on that, I think you may need to clarify that a little bit, because doesn't that depend on your boulevard and where the sidewalk is?
If the snow goes into the boulevard and it doesn't hit your sidewalk, it's not affecting you. You remove the snow from your sidewalk.
Right, but
if the snow from the street gets pushed by the street department onto the sidewalk where you're responsible for removing the snow, the street department is going to come back and pick that up. And that happens on the highways, particularly because there's so much snow and the boulevards are narrow. On 19th Street, it happens in sometimes, not all the time, because there is boulevard there, but it's narrow. And they come back. If they've even just pushed it a little bit, it doesn't release your responsibility to remove snow where it's just fallen. But if it's pushed there by the street department, they come back and pick it up. That's their standard policy. Any other questions?
Mayor, I do get questions, quite a few questions about snow gates, and this is probably a good forum just to reemphasize how those things work and what their limitations are, if we know exactly what that is. My understanding was that with wet, heavy snow, they're not very effective. It sticks to them, and they just don't work very well. The other thing I'd heard was in an event where we've got more than 6 inches of snow, they tend not to be very effective. Right. And I don't know, are there times, for example, in this particular event, did we
We're using
make a
them, but
decision
it's-
not to use
no,
them,
it's,
or
it's challenging, and they may abandon it. It's been tough. They have been using the snow gates in this event, but it's a lot of snow and it's wet, heavy snow, and the snow gates, they're struggling with them, and they may have abandoned it. I don't know. I would give them that leeway if it's just not working out. Even in prime, perfect conditions for a snow gates slow the snow removal process down. They make it take longer to remove the snow. And so, I mean, it's great to have that benefit of having the snow gates so they can lift up when they're going by driveways and such. But it does slow the process down, and it's a trade-off. But we generally use them because people really like it. But in cases like this snow event, if they're having no success with those snow gates, I think they probably would abandon using them. That's a good question. Anyone else? Councilman Mai?
They were using snow gates in my neighborhood today, and I followed along behind them for a few blocks. And some driveways it left clean, and then the next one it put a ridge there. It just depends on what snow is in the street. So,
Right.
but yeah, they were using them, and they seem to work good.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of snow out there.
Right, yeah. And it's sticky. Sticking. Good snowman snow. Right. Okay, anything else?
one more snow question.
Okay.
I believe we've used a contractor at Derby Downs in the past.
Yes.
Pinky Burns, I think, is the contractor. If I assume that's who we're.
I'm not sure who it is.
I don't. That's last I heard that
Yes.
we used. Are we still doing that? Are we still using contractors
Oh,
out there?
absolutely. We have a small staff in the street department, and I think they remove around 60%.
No, I mean in particular at Derby Downs. I'm sorry.
Oh.
Do we?
Yes.
Okay.
The areas that are remote from the central part of town
Right.
are the areas that are typically farmed out to contractors. And I know Pinky Burns does the lake, and maybe also Derby Downs. I'm not sure about that. Yeah. Okay.
If anybody would ever listen to emergency radio or something like that, they would find that the plows are sometimes pulled away from their area in order to create access in an emergency situation.
Right.
For an ambulance. They'll go in front of an ambulance and push out, and then they have to go back to where they were. So I think if people understood the challenges that they have, maybe they would give a little bit more patience. But they're,
Right.
if the ambulance wanted to come to your house, you'd want that plow ahead of that ambulance. And,
That's right.
and they do get pulled from quite a distance sometimes.
right.
So
Yes.
just need to make that point.
Right. And another thing, if the contractor for a particular area fails to get the job done and the street department gets their part done, they do go and finish up in those remote areas. So anything else? Seeing nothing, I will ask for a motion and second to adjourn. Moved by Wise, second by Danforth. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.